And we are live. So, welcome everyone who is joining. I'm excited today to have with me Mary Pat Campbell, who has done a lot of research in life insurance, and she has a great skill set on the technical side for actuaries. So, excited for this conversation, and thank you for joining, Mary Pat.
Hey, glad to be here.
And we could just kind of start off with maybe a couple sentence background, and then we'll dive on in.
Sure, I'm going to give the real nutshell version. I started out in math and physics for my undergrad, went on to graduate school in math, dropped out of a PhD program, and joined the actuarial world soon after. That was in 2002. Became an FSA in 2007. I've worked at TIAA, CREF, at the Infinite Actuary, at SCORE Reinsurance, and now I'm at Conning, where I'm in the insurance research group. As you said, covering life insurance, I also do reinsurance and the general account assets of insurers, also solvency regulations. That's my jam.
That's
So that's the short version. Yeah.
Short version, yeah. I mean, like obviously you've had a full depth of experience, so
Mhm.
on all fronts. So we'll talk a little bit about those different things. But as you said, you studied math and physics in school. I'm curious
Right.
what was kind of the switch and what inspired you to become an actuary. I mean, it sounds like you were pretty close to the PhD with that route.
Okay, yeah. Let's step back. Yeah, I went to grad school for 6 years. I passed all the coursework. I did all the qualifying exams. I just had to do a thesis. Now, anyone who's
You were very
ABD,
close.
no, that's what,
Oh,
no.
okay.
This is, I'm trying, I'm being sarcastic because anyone who's ABD, which is all but dissertation, knows what a huge step it is to
Yeah. Okay.
go from your normal where everything is laid out and having to do a thesis, which is you have to do original research and well, I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. It just wasn't working. I'm not the only ABD. I mean, there are PhDs in the actuarial world, but there's a lot of us who are grad school dropouts. I just happen to have taken longer to figure it out than most people. A lot of people figure out in 1 or 2 years they need to get out, and it took me 6. That's the problem with getting paid to go to grad school. Um, in any case, so I did a lot of different things. I've always been into applied math and math modeling. So that was kind of my interest in physics. I actually started with physics and added math. Most of the physics majors at my university added a math as at least a minor because we had so much required coursework.
Yeah, that makes
And I
sense.
did, yeah, and I did a lot of math modeling related classes in undergrad of modeling all sorts of things. And I did that also. I got a little bit of a research. I do actually have a couple published, officially refereed research papers I'm a co-author on that are in physics. I was modeling carbon nanotubes or Bucky tubes, which were kind of a new substance back then. And we were doing computer models of the molecular dynamics when I got to graduate school. So I decided to continue on in math and not in physics. And I wanted to do math modeling. Financial modeling was really, really popular, but that was a problem because now you're competing for professors and stuff. So I went into
Yeah.
biological modeling and I modeled neurons in the
Wow.
visual cortex. So, okay, so I switched to actuarial, right? Money. And
Yes.
I'm just going to do bottom line. I've just put it
It ma-
out there. No, I've never dreamed of being an actuary. I remembered
Most people
faintly,
don't dream of it.
no, they don't even know what it is.
Yes.
So that's fair. I did remember
Yeah.
kind of from the back of my head when I was an undergraduate, they had a couple of these weird classes to the side. I didn't take them. I took a lot of probability classes, but not these, ones to the side. And I remember the guy in charge of the undergraduate program talking about the actuarial profession and stuff about exams. So what happened was it was September 11th, 2001. I lived in New York City. I was working at NYU as an adjunct.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and my husband Stuart worked for the Catholic Center at NYU.
And how far is
And
NYU from the Twin Towers?
Well, okay, so I was stuck in Queens, and again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole of what happened. I
Yeah.
actually never. I was in Queens. I was in Flushing, Queens, the entire day.
Okay.
Um, I was. It was supposed to be the day before classes began, if I remember correctly. And Stuart had gone. He went like to the subway because he needed to get to his job at the campus, and they had to get ready for the students to come. Um, I didn't make it to the subway because I heard something on the radio. In any
Wow.
case, like a lot of New Yorkers, so in spring of 2002 and like the whole of the fall semester of 2001 was very, very stressful. In 2002, I just kind of sat there thinking, what the hell am I doing?
Yep.
um, and a lot of people, I just rethought things like, okay, I might finish the PhD, but then what? The academic career is very difficult, and it still is very difficult right now. A lot of people are having to adjunct
Yep.
and can't get on a tenure track. I had a few friends who, were semi on the tenure track, and then they got denied tenure. And this is in math. I was like, that's just not. And then the money's not that great.
Yep.
I wanted a certain lifestyle. I wanted to stay in the New York City area. And I'm like, what can make me money that I can do this? And it's something that I have a skill set for.
Yep.
So I'm just going to say actuarial wasn't the only thing I tried. But the thing is, 2002 was a very, very bad year for the financial sector in New York
Mm-hmm.
City. So I sent out a lot of resumes. I got maybe one interview in the financial sector, and I can't remember the name of the company. It was like some hedge fund thing, but I didn't get anywhere with that. And then it comes around to spring 2003. I was teaching math classes on the side while I was trying to do this. I took actuarial exams in the fall of 2002. I took two of them at the same time, back when it was 1 and 2. So the probability calculus
Yep.
exam, and then two was what's the financial mathematics, microeconomics, macroeconomics. So this is before that whole change, and I got pretty good grades on those two in spring of 2003.
I'm
I
curious
spent,
with like
yeah.
the background that you had going into
Oh,
those exams. Were the exams, did they feel semi easy for you with your physics and math background, or did you still have to study a good amount to pass those?
okay, that's an excellent question. This also explains why I took two exams at the same time. So for the younger, and it's probably going to be younger people who are watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so back in the day, the preliminary exams were given only twice a year on paper.
Yep.
Okay, so I just need to make this explicit.
Back in the
Um,
day.
Back in the day. And here's the thing, the probability calculus exam, you've got to realize at that point, I actually started teaching math when I was in high school. And some serious math classes, even going back to like when I was a senior in high school. I had been teaching calculus and probability for many years. For that exam, this was my prep for just the probability calculus exam. There was a sample exam on the SOA site. I printed that out. I sat down and took it. It took me 2 hours. I think 4 hours was the amount of time. And I got them all right. I'm like, okay, I can do that one.
Wow.
So that was the prep for that one. Okay.
That's
It's
crazy.
don't, well, actually, I could still do it with exam P. I could probably
Yeah.
go in with no prep and ace
Pass
it.
that one. Yeah.
Okay, I know probability very, very well, and I
Yep.
can do the problems fast. I used to be on math team and stuff in high school. The exam two, I did have to study that. I never took economics, so I had to study macroeconomics and microeconomics.
Mm-hmm.
Having never seen that before, the financial math part where it's just discount, doing geometric series and discounting
Yeah.
and stuff. That was
Present
easy.
values, future
Yeah.
values, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was easy. So when I got the grades back for course one, it was a 10. And for course two, I got a 7, I believe, on
Okay.
that one.
Yeah.
So I didn't get
I
a
was kind
split
of
out. Yeah.
I was kind of curious because for myself, exam P. Well, it was different when I took
No,
them
yeah, because
compared
yeah, you didn't
compared to
have
you.
the
But like,
calculus. Yeah.
but yeah, the first one is probability still, and that one when I took that, I had it was soon after I graduated. I had taken a probability course and I studied for it, but like not nearly to the depth as I did for the other exams. And
Oh
I
yeah.
passed it first try. It wasn't it wasn't easy, but I passed it without like as much effort as I put in. Like all the other exams, I had to put in way more effort.
Yeah, no, and I did put in a lot more effort for the other preliminary exams. I did a lot. The issue was I did a lot of practice problems for the preliminary exams. That's really the best. Just even throughout, don't wait to do the problems. Do them as soon as you have a little bit. Do some problems. You know,
Definitely, yeah.
every day,
Yep.
every day.
And I agree.
Yeah. So.
So, okay, so transitioning, because I want to definitely get to a lot of the technical type stuff
Right.
in the interview, but I before we get there, I just wanted to ask you, like, can you give people a sense for, since you've been in the corporate world and you've also been you've taught at the university level, can you kind of
Yeah.
compare and contrast the two? And like, I mean, other than the money, we know that in the corporate world you're going to make more money, and that is an honest reason that a lot of people go into it, and like that. That's why I appreciate that honesty, because most people don't say that, but it's the truth. But I'm curious, just if you compare the jobs, how you liked each one.
Well, and it is different. So, and the thing is, I've gotten to do a lot of training and teaching of people who are in the corporate world, but it's very different. So,
Hmm.
you've got to realize when I was teaching before I entered the actuarial world, being an adjunct, you get the crappiest classes to teach. It's usually the required math classes for people. This is their only math. You are what's standing between them and graduation.
Yeah,
They hate
yeah,
your guts. It's not personal. Even so, it's very depressing. A lot of the students, and this was at NYU. I mean, and I taught elsewhere. Actually, I had some even more depressing teaching jobs after NYU. I taught a GED level class for math to people who were definitely a lot older than I was.
and
That was about the most depressing thing. No, they were getting C's and D's at best.
and
It was sad. They
and
couldn't do fractions and percents.
did
Yeah.
they not want to be in that class, or did they have a level of motivation, or was
I
it?
don't actually want to go into the whole
Okay,
thing because
we
this is
won't go into it.
there's a whole thing. There's a whole industry of imposing education on people who don't want it, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So that was very depressing. That said, and I didn't actually mention this in my capsule, I've gone back to teaching after going into the actuarial world, and it's very different now because I'm not teaching those classes. I
Yes.
taught at UConn for about 3 years, and I taught at the Infinite Actuary. I used to do exam seminars, and I currently do some webcasts, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
And so I'm mainly focusing on actuarial professionals, whether they're still, students who are taking exams, or someone like me, at my age. And in some cases, I have colleagues who are older than me who
Hmm.
are going to some of my webcasts, very motivated, lots of great questions. People really want to know how to do it and get things done. And so I love teaching. I still teach in the corporate environment.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. So, and like within a year at TIAA in 2003, I was the resident Excel expert, and I was teaching other people how to do stuff in Excel. So
This is
I've
where
always been a teacher. Yeah, I've
you
always been
you
a
and
teacher.
you and me are alike in this sense. I actually it's funny because I really didn't use Excel when I was in school as a math major, and then when I started, well, I was also a computer science minor. But when
Okay.
I started in the corporate world, of course, I was going to use Excel, and so I had to learn it, and it came very naturally, having done a lot of programming and things like that.
Yeah.
And so very quickly, I became the Excel expert, and I would, at various companies I've been at, I've been kind of the Excel go-to person, similar to
Yeah.
what you're talking about, and it's fun. It's fun talking about stuff that
And
you
it's
like and that other people are interested in and that they're motivated to learn. So
and yeah, and I was
yeah.
just going to say, and so this is something I want to make a distinction. It's not just about teaching; it's also about that academic career.
Hmm.
Is that in both cases, whether you're doing problem solving. So I'm thinking about the research, say.
Yep.
But the difference is kind of why and what's the goal. So I teach people now, but I'm teaching them. It's not because I need a little check mark on the list to graduate of something I don't want to do. This is I need to learn this so I'm able to accomplish these other goals.
What I need to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so even when I'm teaching the UConn classes, so that is for undergraduates. And I had, from freshmen to seniors, actuarial science majors in those classes. And one of the class was kind of required, but my most oversubscribed class, and it wasn't about me because the other people who've taught this class, they have the same problem. It was not required. And it was a computer skills class for, and so that was Excel, VBA, and Access for the actuarial science students. Most popular because everybody knows you're going to need to be able to use these for the job.
Yes, exactly.
To get stuff done. Now, here's the other thing. Let's step back. In the academic sphere, when I was doing research, I had much more kind of intellectually challenging problems. I mean, and this is one of the things I try to, people are trying to get into the actuarial field. I'm just going to say it's not like I'm trying to do the partial differential equation or, really complicated stuff. I mean, there are corners where there are people doing that, but that's, most of the Excel stuff is just tables. You're just
Oh
doing
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would always tell people, like, a lot of the work is really a lot of it's basic algebra, actually. Sometimes you do use the more complicated math, but it depends.
Yeah, it's not really very complicated math, and being able to have a lot of that math at my beck and call, as it were, has made me able to get involved in projects before a lot of other people would be at that stage of their career. So that was a boost, but the challenge never came from the math. Or even the programming per se. It's the business problems,
Definitely.
and it was very, it's very different goals, very different focus. Yeah.
Yes. So going to the business side, before we dive into the technical stuff, can you give us an idea of what it entails to do life insurance research,
Yeah.
how is that different from a traditional actuarial type job?
Right. So I'm working in the insurance research group at Conning. I'm kind of sitting outside of, and I'm sorry, my battery is going to be very low. I don't know why it's draining so fast. Sorry. So
Oh, no
we're going to
problem.
have probably a hard stop at 1:30.
Okay,
But
good to
so
know.
I'm sitting outside the insurance companies. I'm sucking in all this data from statutory reporting, GAAP reporting, and huge news feeds, and trying to synthesize that into insights for insurance company executives of what's actionable. A lot of the stuff that we do, it's benchmarking for them so they can see where do we stand in terms of sales growth, how are we performing, with regards to our loss ratios and that kind of thing, or how are different lines of business getting involved. So we have our standard research that we're doing all the time. We do forecasts, we do business segment research. So that's twice a year. And I have all of the life insurance lines: group life, whole life, term life, universal life, variable universal life, and life reinsurance. So it's like, we cover that whole thing. We've got property and casualty, we've got health, but then we also have consulting jobs, and that's all over the place to sometimes help a board think through a strategic decision or tell their story to a credit rating agency, all sorts of things. So it's very broad, versus if you're in the insurance company, generally you have your specific corner that you're working on.
Yes,
So it's very
definitely.
focused. So even though I have life insurance, it's like all of the US
That's
life
yeah, no,
insurance.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. So,
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I bet it sounds like a lot of fun because, yeah, usually actuaries have like one, like you said, one focus within their company, whereas you get more of a broad view.
Okay.
Um, so let's dive into some of the technical stuff so we can get to that before your
Yeah.
battery dies. And if it
Yeah.
does, that's all right. Just so
That's
everyone
okay.
knows that it'll end when the battery dies. But what would you say is the number one technical skill that actuaries should have?
Yeah, I told you that I was going to give you a strange answer for that one, and I
Yep.
am. You need to learn how to learn. I'm not joking about this, and I'm going to share
Hmm.
my screen at this point. I'm going to share my whole screen,
Yep,
and
we can
let
see
me
it.
explain this. I had a thread on the Actuarial Outpost, so we'll provide these links afterwards in the notes, I guess. Um,
Yes.
So I did a thread in 2010, and I had a variety of reasons for this, asking the older actuaries, tell me about what your job was like, in the 1970s, 1980s. What was that like? And there's some great stories in here. So we were talking about Monte Carlo in this post. So Brad Guile, he's been retired for a while. Yeah, graduated high school a few days shy of 50 years ago. So that was in 2010. He had never heard of Monte Carlo back then. He ended up doing Monte Carlo decades later. I want you to think, what are the things you have
Yep.
to set up? Yes, you have to set up to do the work as you do it now. So here's another one. I started in PNC in the late 80s. They had 286s. That was a computer type. And I had a 286 a long time ago in high school. So they had to manually enter data. I mean, it's a great thread to read to see how much has changed. And these people, a lot of them weren't retired. They were still doing the work. They had to learn, even past exams. So the exams gives you some of the actuarial stuff. And yeah, we have a continuing education requirement, but most of us need a lot more than the 30 hours or whatever that are required. You need to learn how to learn. And that means sometimes there's not an organized class. Most of the stuff I've
Hmm.
learned. So I'm sorry, I'm going to share again. I
Go
just
for
thought
it.
of another one. Yep, share. So here is something from 2007. Yes, I have a lot of threads on the Actuarial Outpost. How do you know your spreadsheet is right? And let me explain how this happened. So I had been working at TIA CREF for 4 years at that point, and I was the Excel expert there, and I was self-taught from books, mainly at that time. But now I would do online courses and Googling my questions is how I would do it now. But the big thing that was missing was any kind of organization or any kind of structure. I did take so you took some computer science courses, so I had a computer
Hmm.
science background too, and you learn about what makes good algorithms and mess and spaghetti code versus really structuring things well. I learned computer science using the language Pascal, and if you know anything about the language Pascal, is it forces you to have structure. Because I did learn basic first.
Okay.
um, I learned basic when I was 7 years old. So this gives you an idea. So I was using basic, and then I took a computer science course when I was 12 or 13. It was a program at something called CTY, and I learned Pascal. And so I learned like all of the sort algorithms and doing that, implementing that in Pascal. So I couldn't do my go-tos anymore. I think Pascal loosened up after that, and you could do go-tos.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the point is, I
Go-tos,
had
you can get real messy with go-tos.
yeah, yeah. And so I really started looking into how do you really design spreadsheets well? How do you do error checking and controls? I mean, I'm still doing this. I
Hmm.
just did a webcast on this like in May for ActX, so on errors. So that this is something that I'm still doing because it's a problem. It's a basic tool we use, and most of us don't get any formal training in it. And you have to be able to seek out the knowledge you need. And so a lot of that is information I amassed deliberately seeking it out. And then teaching myself these techniques and then telling other people about it. That's kind of the whole cycle of
Yeah,
knowledge for me is I go look
definitely.
for it, I synthesize it, I digest it, and then I tell other people about it, hopefully getting paid sometimes. So
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, so
that's
that's how I do
interesting. You
it,
you
yeah.
said the learn to learn. That is a great answer. My answer was actually kind of how you ended that conversation, was going to be the number one skill would be documentation, is what I was going to say. And I
Oh,
am
yeah.
I'm not always the best at this, but I would say things that are clearly documented or that are easy to follow. And documentation doesn't always just mean writing. It also means organizing your code, organizing your spreadsheets, like you said, because when you can do that, it's a way of
I
communicating
mean,
to others. And I think that's huge. That goes
oh,
like
I've got
a
I've
long
got
way.
lots of opinions about documentation. The
Okay.
problem is, like a lot of the standard regulatory, and I'm not going to do too much about this, like SOX 404 and all the other crap, that The documentation that's produced under those systems is never used because it's a document separate from the process. If you really want documentation to work, this is the only thing I got to say, you have to put it where people are using it. So as you say, the organization that generally clear labels in the spreadsheet, a clear flow of information, a clear structure, make your spreadsheets readable.
Right.
Human readable, because the whole point is it's humans that are the problem, not
Totally.
the computers. It's
Yes.
usually the humans. So you need to make it usable for humans, and that's all I really need to say about documentation. And this is, again, I'm like over 15 years in this career, and it's still, process and documentation, still a big thing. And it's not just actuarial. Most of the people I work with are not actuaries, by the way,
Yeah.
but they're all insurance industry professionals and experts.
Definitely. Yeah.
So it's really, that's what I like too. Is I used to be just in an actuarial department, and now I work with a lot of non-actuaries. So that's a lot of good mix as
Definitely.
well. So people who had been underwriters and other, coming from other parts of the industry, it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm going to kind of blend a couple of the other questions. It's just so we have time to hit a couple of these, but I'm curious your thoughts on an actuary learning some programming skills, and how important do you think VBA is to their toolbox, essentially?
So you need to know some VBA, but you actually don't need to know a lot of VBA. I would say you need to know enough to do some simple automation. And by the way, I have a webcast on that coming in the fall.
Perfect.
Just plugging that.
We'll put some links below. So
we'll put some links to where my webcasts are with. I do it with Actex. That said, so with VBA, you need to know how to loop, to do some if-thens and some logical tests. I would want to know how to open a file, close a file, and a few other basic VBA things. Just some stuff that to minimize manual processes that a lot of times you're copy pasting and stuff. If it's something you're doing all the time, being able to replace that with VBA is good. That said, you don't necessarily need to know all of the really, be able to write a COM add-in and some of the really complicated stuff.
Yep.
You leave it to other people like, hey, Paul, who has his own add-in.
Exactly.
So I'll plug you right back. But there are niches, and so for VBA, one of the big problems with getting too deep into VBA is you need to be able to hand off your files to other people. So you can't have anything that's too complicated if it's VBA.
Yes.
Okay. It depends on the group you're working with, and the other thing is Excel. I'm just going to put this here. Excel developers, whatever, at Microsoft kind of hate VBA and keep trying to decrement it and keep trying to put stuff in your basic Excel that you can't control from VBA to get you out of that. So you use VB.net and some other stuff.
Yep.
So the other problem with VBA is it's kind of a half-assed language. It's not a fully implemented one like, say, Python. And so if you're going to learn programming, don't learn it with VBA. But if you're using Excel, at least learning a little bit of VBA so you can at least do some simple macros, simple loops, and some,
Definitely.
move, take something that's a result and take the values and put it in a file and document it and that kind of thing automatically and not manual copy paste. That's what you should know in VBA, just a little bit.
Yeah. So on the programming kick, if an actuary were wondering about learning SAS or R or Python or some of these various statistical programming languages, I know various companies use different things, but what would be kind of your number one language of choice?
So it depends on what you're trying to learn. I think knowing both R and Python is really good. They're kind of the foundational languages for people in data science. Now there's some other ones that are specialized, like Julia and there's some other ones. I'll just say there's some other ones.
Okay, yeah.
So I remember actually using R when it got started, and the guys who developed SAS were originally at my university, and they had a really good statistical department at this was North Carolina State University. But I was using all sorts of languages. If you want to learn like real computer science, then you need Python. The other thing is there's a huge user community in Python, and most of them are not data science people,
Hmm.
but a lot of them are getting it done people. And so Python is fairly easy, and there's so many packages to use in Python. So if you learn that, you can really learn some good programming in Python. And there's so many very good online courses, even for free, for Python. I did some in edX and in Coursera, doing a variety of, implementing algorithms I knew that I had done in C way back
Okay,
when,
yeah.
and
Yep.
even in Fortran, to give you an idea. But R, so if you want to do some serious statistical work, I think R is a good one to use, just because it was developed academically.
Hmm.
That said, almost everything that's in R can be done in Python, and then there's various things that let the two
Work
intersect.
together, yeah.
Yeah. There's the Jupyter notebooks, which is Julia, Python, and R. So doing stuff in a notebook environment, though I have a friend, and I'm trying to remember which friend it was, has a whole presentation on why notebooks suck. Um, and he's got a point. It's not a stable, so it's not something you would use for serious actuarial work.
Yeah, okay.
It is a good tool for learning, and for sharing little snippets of code for people to learn and try out little bits.
Yep.
But you need to learn how to deal with the interpreted code, as in R, compiled code, which you can get with Python.
Mhm.
You don't have to see, the thing is, I think C is just getting way too down into, and even Java to a certain extent is a little too computer sciencey for
Yep.
the casual actuary. I think Python is very accessible.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
I would, yeah, if you want to learn programming, Python. If you want to learn more about the data science and some of the stuff that goes in some data stuff, I would go R.
Yeah.
But you really
See,
should
this
learn
is
both, and learn how to use them together. That's my opinion. I think Python has so many better packages for data visualization,
yeah.
and R has much better just documentation and some background on doing the actual number crunching.
Okay.
That's and so I'm so used to using a lot of different tools. When I worked at TA Craft, and actually even at SCORE, yeah, I used Excel, obviously, but I also used C++, and I did some stuff in Perl, which was really weird.
Oh,
So
I've used
yeah,
Perl a little bit.
yeah. I still actually have
Is
some
it
Perl code up
doesn't
on my personal
Perl has,
website.
like, I remember it has a lot of regular expressions in
Yes,
Perl.
that's no, that's exactly what I was using it for. Now
Yeah.
you can do that in Python easily too,
Yeah.
but I was using Perl just to do regex stuff,
Okay.
because it was so easy.
Yep.
I was doing file processing things
See,
and
that's perfect for
reorganizing
that.
files and stuff.
Yeah.
So this is okay. So this is my, again, learn to learn. I have a very broad toolbox with regards to technical tools. I
Mhm.
have some very deep tools with regards to math and analysis.
Mhm.
Okay, so that I know really deep. And the battery's about to die.
Okay, that's all right.
So let's like maybe wrap it up somehow.
Okay, so final couple questions. Favorite hobby outside of work?
Okay, and you know what this one. So yes, I'm prepared. Um, Sumo wrestling and a tournament is coming up. I highly recommend Jason's All Sumo channel. He is an American who lives and works in Japan. He's a huge sumo fan, and he provides commentary and explanation. He's awesome. I actually have my own YouTube channel for like talking about the books I read and some math stuff. And I'm actually going to try to do a few on sumo myself, but I've only been into it for like a year. It's if you're not much of a, I'm not much of a sports person, but these are awesome. The matches are over in seconds. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't realize, you think, oh, they're the big guys.
Yep.
Well, one of the hot new wrestlers, Inho, is just a little bigger than me. I mean, he's probably about 50 pounds heavier, but he's only like a few inches taller than me. And he's like hundreds of pounds lighter than some of the
That's
guys he's been
crazy.
beating. His matches are so fun to watch. But that said, he's going to be limited because really the top sumo wrestlers have technique. He's got great technique, but he doesn't have, the leverage, from physics. He doesn't have the mass.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Well,
yep,
actuaries, you never would have
yeah,
guessed it. Mary Pat Campbell and sumo wrestling.
yeah.
I love it. I'm
Oh,
gonna
and yeah, and my favorite Excel function, yes, we prepped before. It's if
yes.
error. If error. It's the
Okay, yep.
best. It's the best one ever.
Nice.
Yeah, it's new since I started using Excel, and I love it. I use it
Hmm.
all the time.
I
Yep,
use that one too.
yep.
That's a good one because I hate seeing errors and like pound NAs and all that in spreadsheets, and
Well,
it's a good way to.
part of it, yeah, I mean, I have opinions about errors, obviously, but it's that I publish. So I have publishable spreadsheets. I can't have ugly errors on my spreadsheets.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's why I have if error. Yep,
I like it. Well,
yep,
thank you so much, Mary Pat, for joining. I know your battery is about to die, but
yep.
anyone who has any questions, you can go ahead. Feel free to comment, and Mary Pat or myself will answer those. Anyway, we look forward to putting your links in the notes below
Sounds
and
good.
hear more of your webinars. So thanks again for joining.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you all next time.